You're watching Newsfeed AM. Let's pick up on the markets now. And global market trade has been mute along with activity on the JSE and the Rand. Investors looking ahead to the latest decision on the U.S. interest rates. Portfolio manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers is Grant Nader, joining us now for a quick look at how the JSE is shaping up in early trade. Grant, good morning to you. Let's begin with how the global and local markets are expected to wrap up this trading week following that mixed trade in the past few days.
Morning, Toyle. Yes, there's been quite a lot of data to digest this week. Some good, some bad, some pointing to rate hikes that are steadying out, no more rate hikes. Some saying we're going to see, a slowdown in the economy. If you look at the U.S. leading indicators, in the context of what we saw yesterday in the South African inflation numbers and rate hikes. So I think what we're going to see is the market is starting to understand it's time to look through the hiking cycle. It's time to expect peak rates. And what that means is it's time to start looking at where the beneficiaries are 6 to 9 months out as we enter into what hopefully will become a rate cutting cycle in the early half, or at least the first half of next year. So what I would expect to see is a gentle, steady bid under the South African companies that have been under pressure for most of this year. If there's any pullback, I think the miners are also holding up well over this week as we start to see some improving prospects out of China. There's further stimulus expectations coming out of China. So I would expect our market to be, although we've seen quiet trade, I think there's a general feeling that there's a bid in the market. Buyers are looking for opportunities, and it's time to look through the noise. Globally, I think we're seeing the same thing. The US markets run hard the last 6 months actually, but there was some signs of profit taking last night. But we're also seeing rotation into other sectors and other markets. So I feel broadly the market is starting to look for a bit more value, something a bit more in the cyclical space, and I feel there's a broad bid under markets generally.
Looks to be a
tough, but interesting.
Yeah, it looks to be a tough balancing act moving forward. Grant, let's talk about emerging market currencies. How are they faring along with the Rand?
Emerging market currencies are holding up well. As the Fed has been the lead in the rate hiking cycle, and they're going to be the lead through the down cycle, certainly from a developed markets point of view. And so what that will do is it should favor emerging market currencies. And we've seen that over the last month, where the Rand has recovered almost 5% of its losses for the year. And I expect the Rand, which gave back a little bit on the rates announcements yesterday, I expect it to steady out. And actually, I see there's a gentle improvement in the Rand this morning. Other emerging currencies are behaving in the same way. So I suspect that the outlook for emerging market currencies is actually generally positive from here.
Let's talk company news. There is a trading update from Mr. Price. Talk us through their performance for the 13 weeks, which ended on the 1st of June.
I think it was really a tough update from them. It reflects two things. One, it reflects the challenges we all know about in the economy around load shedding and the consumer. And of course, they play in the mid to lower LSM space. So their target market is actually under the most pressure in terms of the food inflation and the consumer spending components that are under the most pressure. But over and above that, what we're seeing is that they seem to be struggling to generate sales volume growth and sales revenue growth, which tells me that they're actually having to discount to sustain their market share. I see a very flat revenue growth coming through there. And that means the expectation for profits is going to be negative. They've said themselves they don't think they're going to generate profits in this half year, and that's quite a negative update the way I see it. It's a fiercely competitive space. There's a lot of online retailers in the market that aren't listed that are also taking market share. So I found a very tough update from Mr. Price, and I would say slightly disappointing.
Let's conclude with the sale of Mango Airline, which remains in limbo pending litigation by the interested consortium against the Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan. What do you make of this?
I find it quite frustrating. I think what we need is a bit more competition in the airline space for the benefit of the consumer. I think the ultimate cost of sorting Mando out and selling it off to a private consortium has been flagged and earmarked by the government. That set aside, it was 800 million. It will be a one-off cost. There's no real tangible NAV left in this business. I think we should trust the practitioner who's been put in place and let the deal go through, bring competition into the market to the benefit of the consumer. So I find this a little bit frustrating, and I hope that the court case goes in favor of the consortium.
Well, we shall see how it all ends. Thank you very much for that markets update. Grant Nader is a portfolio manager at Benguela Global Fund.